So I think having the mindset of growth and growing through slowdowns is an important mindset to have. I know, as I've got a little bit of the financial background, when finance leaders see these periods, they tend to be kitchen sink periods in quotes, where you can kind of throw everything in and have a little bit more forgiveness as you think about what you're investing in versus what you're writing down. So there's an opportunity during slow growth to really make investments that are the right long-term investments, even though it may disappoint shareholders or disappoint constituents. It's a really opportunistic time to make those big investments as you go through there.
And I think the time to be thinking about this is perhaps before the economic slowdown happens, right? So that you're prepared for it, so that you can take advantage of those opportunities. It's about becoming agile rather than necessarily shrinking or growing, gaining that capability of being able to shrink and grow at will, and being prepared for an economic slowdown, or even the opposite, when the economy bounces back. I mean, these things tend to happen in cycles. If you're prepared for it, then you can grow and shrink your expenses and your business and take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, I like to point out to customers that everybody did a great job ultimately responding to COVID, but the next disruption might not be like COVID, right? That was a very particular sort of a disruption. The next one might be another pandemic with different characteristics, or it might be a result of global warming, or it might be a war or trade war. There are so many possibilities for major disruptions. And how can you prepare for any kind of disruption that might ever come, right? It sounds a little bit impossible, but I think what Jake said is kind of the key. You got to build a certain kind of agility that lets you respond quickly when you see what the parameters are. I was just talking to a customer today who pointed out that in COVID, generally leadership was still available to make decisions. They weren't completely out of commission. And in a lot of disasters, that's exactly what you don't have. Somebody else has to take over and be able to run things.
So that argues in favor of having autonomous teams and kind of distributed command and control.
Yeah, and having good control over access and authentication and things like that, right? Because often what will happen is power will be transferred from one person to another, and the second person doesn't have access to the data they need, for example, or doesn't have check signing authority. They can't commit money, or something else they need to be able to do. Running like tabletop simulations can sometimes help surface these things, although really it's hard to predict how it's going to unfold in a real crisis.
All right. I like how this escalated from an economic downturn to a full-blown catastrophe.
Oh, yes.
But scenario planning is really important, as we all know through our experiences, because you can't really plan for all of these scenarios, but having the right controls in place, as you mentioned, I know we talk to customers a lot around prioritization and the ability to have the right mechanisms in place to make those decisions. I love the autonomous teams. I know that I see a lot of customers struggle with the balance of central authority versus distributed authority and how to make decisions.
There's an art to it, right? And I think a lot of times customers and all of us tend to look at things in trade-offs, in terms of trade-offs, when sometimes you got to challenge the premise of the question. Sometimes it's not a trade-off. Sometimes you can have both. I think oftentimes you can have both. And I think in terms of governance, you can have both, right? You can have autonomous teams, but you can still have centralized oversight and control. It just takes a nuanced approach, and perhaps a new approach than what you're used to.
Yeah. How would you say that works at Amazon? Because we definitely have decentralized teams. How do we get that sort of control?
I think we err on the side of decentralization more than control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's by design.
Sometimes it seems to me that the leadership principles that we have are one of the keys, right? We know that everybody in the company is going to make decisions based on those leadership principles. So whatever decision they make is going to be probably reasonably okay, because we know they're going to be following those principles. So go ahead and be autonomous, because we're all held together by sort of a set of a foundation, let's say, of common understanding.
Yeah, and just like all leadership principle theory, it's balancing leadership principles, like in this case, probably deliver results and bias for action, right? So you're autonomous. You get to make the decision, but you need to deliver. You can't just make arbitrary decisions and get arbitrary results. You need to actually make intelligent decisions, learn from your mistakes, course correct when necessary, and ultimately, at the end of the day, accomplish things and deliver value for customers.